Hello everyone, my name is Hayden Green and today I'll be discussing the transition to high density living in the Australian housing market. There are six topics that I'll be discussing today. These are the critical factors which are driving the transition to high density living in Australia, the social advantages and disadvantages of ultra high rise developments, which are buildings containing more than 50 stories, negative social and practical issues with high density living, a comparison of urban sprawl and high-density living, including both the positive and negative issues for each, sustainability and environmental implications of high-rise living, and the last item I'll be talking about is my personal preference for ultra high-rise living and whether I would choose to live in an ultra high-rise development with my family. The first topic I'll be exploring today is the critical factors behind the transition to high-density living in Australia. The main factors which I will talk about are population growth, housing affordability, government policies and planning, sustainability, and infrastructure development. The first is population growth, and with Australia's capital cities expanding rapidly, more people are moving to urban centres in search of jobs, education, and better opportunities. This has increased the demand for housing, particularly in densely populated areas where space is limited, prompting a shift towards compact living solutions like townhouses and multi-story developments. Housing affordability is another major driver, with property prices rising in cities. Buyers are shifting towards lower cost, smaller land housing options like apartments and townhouses instead of the traditional detached dwellings with larger lots of lands. Governments often introduce policies and planning requirements to promote high density housing and prevent urban sprawl. Some examples of this include changing zoning requirements, planning regulations, and creating incentives for buyers, like the first time home owner grant. Not only is this reducing urban sprawl, but it makes better use of the existing infrastructure. Sustainability is the next factor which drives high density development for both economical and environmental aspects. In high-rise buildings, the shared walls between units help to reduce the demand on the HVAC system, reducing energy usage. The reduction of urban sprawl helps to preserve land and green spaces. This reduces car traffic and helps promote the use of bicycles and walking. This in turn will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The final point I'll be talking about is infrastructure development, and as I hinted at, this promotes the transition to high density living as government investments into transportation makes access to high density places easier. Other forms of public infrastructure like stadiums also attract more people within cities, which in turn increases high density living. Ultra high-rise developments are developments more than 50 stories and are becoming more popular within Australian cities. These developments have a range of social advantages and disadvantages. The main social advantages I'll be talking about today are positive social lifestyles, urban renewal, and the place of attachment. The disadvantages I'll be talking about today are social isolation, overcrowding, and loss of privacy. The first advantage is that ultra-high-rise developments promote community living and social interactions as they can accommodate thousands of residents and include shared spaces such as gyms, pools, and lounges. They also provide residents with access to nearby urban amenities such as shops, restaurants. This further promotes social interactions and active urban lifestyles. The next advantage is urban renewal, which is where rundown areas, as well as the surrounding businesses, are transformed from the new developments. This also helps to connect a wide range of people from different cultures and socio-economic backgrounds. The last advantage is that these developments can form a place of attachment with the occupants as they form community bonds with the neighbours. The units also create a sense of belonging and they can create emotional bonds with the apartment and neighbourhood. However, there are some social challenges with ultra high-rise living. The first is the potential for social isolation. Although these developments have neighbours in close proximity, they can feel quite disconnected through the soundproof acoustic walls and the interactions between neighbours. which can be quite minimal for residents. This can cause residents to feel like they're socially isolated. Overcrowding is also a disadvantage because communal areas can become overcrowded and their units can feel impersonal due to the close proximity between neighbors. This can make occupants feel stressed or discomforted, impacting their mental well-being. The last disadvantage is loss of privacy. This can happen because occupants don't have their own personal outdoor space and can also live in close proximity to neighbors. I now need to talk about the negative social and practical issues associated with high density living. The negative social issues for the ultra high rise living are also the same as I discussed for the high density developments in general. These negative social issues include residents feeling socially isolated and overcrowded. There are several practical challenges associated with these developments, and the first is privacy, which is a common concern amongst residents, especially when living in close proximity to neighbors. Acoustic proofing and the placement of windows is key to ensure that residents maintain privacy. Maintenance challenges are also another significant practical issue, especially in high-rise buildings where they require frequent maintenance of systems such as elevators, HVAC systems, and more. Traffic is also worsened by high-rise developments as the existing road and transportation systems need to ensure that they can accommodate for the higher populations caused by the developments. Parking is also often an issue due to limited land availability and developers wanting to assign a maximum amount of space to units while minimizing parking. Lastly, ensuring a consistent and reliable water supply to upper floors is crucial. High-rise buildings often require water booster systems to maintain adequate pressure, making plumbing design and regular monitoring essential. We now need to explore the positive and negative aspects of both urban sprawl and high-density living. Now, urban sprawl relates to when urban developments spread out over nearby underdeveloped land and is typically the opposite of high-density living. The advantages and disadvantages comparison between these two have been shown in this table. Now, firstly, urban sprawl leads to larger homes and outdoor spaces. Meanwhile, high-density living will have less home and outdoor space. This can have financial implications as the more land, the more it will appreciate in value. And it can also have emotional implications, as the personal land creates a desirable living environment for families who value space and privacy. Suburban areas also are more peaceful compared to high density areas, which can experience higher levels of noise and even overcrowding. The next comparison is that suburban areas with few people help to create a sense of community. However, on the flip side, high density areas can create social isolation, as I previously went through. Urban sprawl does come with its own set of disadvantages, however, as it leads to more habitat removal with the lower housing density. This also means less land is available for farming and agriculture. On the other hand, high density living uses less land and so is more environmentally sustainable. Urban sprawl also increases commute time and dependency on cars, which results in higher greenhouse gas emissions. And lastly, high density living also encourages social interactions as more people are contained within the one space or building. Both of these developments have their own advantages and disadvantages, and so it's important that urban planners find a good balance between the two to balance growth with the needs of residents. High density living has sustainability and environmental considerations. Now, as cities grow and populations increase, urban sprawl becomes less viable as high-density developments offer a more efficient use of land and resources. This makes them a more attractive option for urban planners as they prepare to plan for the future with high populations. One of the most significant sustainability advantages of high-density living is the reduced land consumption. By building upwards rather than outwards, high-density developments minimize the impact on surrounding natural habitats and agricultural land. This means that green spaces are reserved and habitats are also conserved. High-density living promotes energy efficiency, as high-rise residential buildings generally consume less energy for heating and cooling compared to other detached homes. This results in lower greenhouse gas emissions or carbon emissions. High-rise developments are also now starting to incorporate green technologies into their design, such as solar panels and rainwater harvesting systems. Transportation is the last benefit I'll talk about, and high-density developments make residents live closer to work, transportation systems, and other amenities. This reduces commute times, which in turn reduces traffic and pollution from cars. There are sustainability disadvantages, however, for high-density living. Overcrowding often occurs, which causes strain on the infrastructure, such as transportation systems, water supply systems, waste management systems, and healthcare systems, amongst others. And the last challenge, which might be encountered, is the heat island effect. And this occurs when tall buildings, especially with vast concrete surfaces, become significantly warmer in the cities than surrounding rural areas. This increases the demand for HVAC systems within buildings, which in turn increases energy usage. Now, the last slide is my personal preference when it comes to ultra high-rise living and whether I would raise a family in these ultra high-rise living developments. I personally prefer more rural areas, caused from urban sprawl, because they are more spacious and I feel a greater connection to nature. It is also a slower pace of life, which gives me more privacy and I have more personal outdoor space, making it feel more personalized for me and my family. There is also less traffic around the town, which would be a benefit for me and my family, especially when I don't need to go into the city every day. The last benefit, which would make my family live in a more suburban area, is that the cost of living is generally lower. This is important, especially when I'm trying to support my family. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.